Yes.
Oh, excellent. That's good. Right. Okay. So, I want to cover up a couple of things that we have not covered up with you. So, let's start off. Last time, you remember, we started on the traditional costing. So, I just want to quickly go to the update and then we will move it from there. Okay?
All right.
Right.
Okay.
So last time we did the traditional costing. So let's refresh ourselves on the traditional costing because everything is based on this one. So why do we do costing? We do costing because we have to value our inventory. To do the value of inventory, we need to know the cost per product, cost per unit. So for that purpose, we need to know the cost per unit, and therefore we do need to do costing. Then to record the cost. Whenever we sell a product, we must know the cost of sales. So for that purpose, we need to record the cost, and for that purpose, we need to do costing. Then to price the product, because we must know what is the cost to sell a product. So for that purpose, we need to know how costing. Then to make decisions, certain times we may have to sell it at lower cost. You see some supermarkets, they sell certain products at a bargain price. So they have to decide, okay, at what price can we sell it? If we don't sell, what will happen? If we sell it at this price, what's going to happen? So they have to make lot of decisions. So some customer might come and ask you, I want to buy so much of quantity, what discount can you give? So you need to know the cost for you to work out the new price. So decision making. So therefore, the business need to know the cost of product or services. So remember, the businesses are doing two things. Either they can produce a product or they can produce a service. So now, right at the moment, what I'm doing is I'm giving you a service. Service of CIMA knowledge. What is your business? Where are you working? What is your business? What do you do, sir?
Yes. I'm working in company for customer service.
Customer service, yeah. So you're also giving a service, isn't it?
Yes.
You're also giving a service. So there are a lot of service organizations, but there are also manufacturing organizations like pharmaceutical products, food products. A lot of products are manufactured products. So whatever it is, you need either way. In every business, I think you can't stay without costing today in the business world. Right? So, so we discussed the other day the cost, how it will behave. One way, up to a certain level of activity, I'm emphasizing the word up to a certain level of activity, some cost will remain same. Whether you produce 1 unit or whether you produce 100,000 units, the cost will remain same. So that type of a cost, we call it fixed cost. Fixed cost, right? So that it won't move. So, sorry, it won't move. It is always fixed cost. So, up to a particular point. So, now, for example, if I do 2 students or 3 students, my electricity bill will remain the same because it doesn't depend on the number of students. It is the same electricity I will be spending when I do it. So that's a fixed cost for me. Whether I have 3 students or 1 student, it will be a fixed cost for me. But if I'm going to give study material, that is going to be a variable cost. If I have 1 student, I have to give only 1 set of material. If I have 3 students, I have to give 3 sets of material. So that moves with the number of activity, number of people, or number of activities what you are going to do. So that's what we call a variable cost. So generally variable cost move directly in proportion to the activity. If you are doing 1 unit, $10, 2 units, $20, 3 units, $30. But however, it may not be that way all the time. Why? Because sometimes when you do lot of work, your cost per unit can come down. What is the reason? That is basically you have certain product where you have something that we call economies of scale. Economies of scale. So due to that one, the cost may come down per unit. But normally otherwise, the cost will remain same with no production, no cost. So that is what we call a variable cost. Then there's something called semi-variable cost. Semi-variable cost is where it contains a fixed one and a variable component. Now sometimes when you go to an internet cafe, they might say up to 1 hour they will charge so much. But after 1 hour, so whether you do 1 hour or half an hour, you have to pay so much. But after 1 hour, if you are going, they might say they have to charge it according to the number of minutes or something. Right? So that's a semi-variable cost. Part is fixed, part is variable. So now most of our internet connections are like that. Up to a particular point, they charge a minimum amount, a monthly amount. But after that, if you exceed and do it, you have to pay a bigger amount, and that is in proportion to the usage. That's what, so that kind of a cost we call semi-variable cost. Then we have something called step-up cost. That is the cost up to a particular point is there, then immediately it will increase. Now that is what we call a step-up cost. So let me see whether I can explain this one, because my today these people have GoToMeeple people have changed some of their programs. So sometimes I can't write it, but I want to show you something. I'll see whether I can do that one for you. So I want to see whether I can do something on this way. Yeah. So now can you see a screen here?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a blue color screen, you can see.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm going to write something just to show you how these things can vary, Sam. Right. So I told you the fixed cost is, oh, it's still not coming. Okay, right. So let's assume that you are producing 10,000 units of a particular product, right? 10,000. So this is what we call the activity level, 10,000 units. So there are certain costs, maybe rent, for example, it is 100,000 rent. So up to 20,000 units, you can use this premises. So your rent, whether you produce 10,000 or 20,000, it will be 100,000. So cost per unit, when you are producing 10,000, it will be 10, that is 100,000 divided by 10,000. But when you are producing 20,000, what is the cost per unit?
100.
Pardon? Cost per unit. Cost per unit, I got it. 100,000 is the total cost. I divided by the number of units. So here I got 10 bucks. 10. So if it is 20,000 units, what is the cost? What is the cost per unit? Cost per unit.
Just.
Yeah. So you have to divide 100,000 by 20,000. Correct?
It's 100,000.
Yeah. 100,000 is the total cost, right? Earlier we had 10,000 activity. Now we have 100,000, 20,000 activity. So the cost per unit is 100,000 divided by 20,000. Correct?
Yes.
So your cost per unit is 5. So if I put it on a graph, this one, I want you to look at this graph very carefully. This is my activity level, right? The vertical is my activity, horizontal is my activity level. This is my cost. So 0 cost, 0 activity, 100,000 activity, 200,000 activity. Now my total fixed cost, when it is 0 or 100,000, when it is 0, sorry, not 100,000, 10,000 activity, 20,000 activity. So my total fixed cost, the rent I pay to the building, whether I produce 0 units, still I have to pay 100,000 rent.
100,000. Yes, 100,000.
100,000 rent. Even if I am producing 10,000, I have to pay 100,000 rent. Even if I am producing 20,000, I have to pay 100,000 rent. So you can see the fixed cost will remain fixed. it won't change. Whether it is 0, 10,000 or 20,000, the fixed cost is 100,000. So that is, I looked at the total fixed cost. Total fixed cost. But I want to now show you another one. The same thing in another chart. I want to show you because these are some other short questions you might have it. I want to show you another one. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So can you see this green one I'm doing? Can you see the line clearly? Is the color okay? Not okay?
Yes, clear.
Clear. Okay. Right here I'm looking. Now here I saw total cost. Here I'm looking cost per unit. Cost per unit. And this is again the activity. So activity 0, 10,000 to 20,000. So when the activity is 0, cost per unit also will be 0. When the activity is 0, cost per unit will be 0. Right? Because there is no cost. Right? When the activity is 10,000, what did we see? When the activity is 10,000, cost per unit is 5.
5.
Sorry, cost per unit is 10. Cost per unit is 10. Activity is 10,000. Cost per unit is 5. It's 10. When the activity is 20,000, cost per unit is 5. It is coming down to 5. So you can see that with the cost, it is coming down now. Cost per unit will come down. The fixed cost per unit will come down. But the fixed cost will remain same. Total fixed cost rate, this is cost per unit, fixed cost per unit will come down. So this is very important because in a short question, they might give you have to see with double lines, what is the vertical column. If the vertical column is cost per unit, it will start coming down with the activity. But if the vertical column is total cost, it will remain fixed. Correct?
Yes.
Right. So that is what we call the fixed cost behavior is this way. So the fixed cost will behavior in that way. Now I want to look at what I call the variable cost, which I was explaining to you. Variable cost. So variable cost, I told you 10,000 units when you are producing, variable cost is 50,000. When you are producing 20,000, variable cost is 100,000. When you are producing 30,000, variable cost is 150,000. So now I want to see the cost per unit. Cost per unit. What is the cost per unit here? Number 1, first area. How much is the cost per unit? 50,000 units, 10,000 cost. Sorry, 10,000 units, 50,000 cost. What is the cost per unit?
Yes.
How much?
Okay, this one.
Yeah. Total cost is 50. Number of units 10. So 50 divided by 10 or 50,000 divided by 10,000. How much?
Yes, my PC is locked, so I cannot because I'm using mobile. So to calculate it.
All right. Okay. Okay. So I will do it for you. 50,000 into 10,000 is 50,000 divided by 10,000 is 5. Right?
Yes.
100,000 divided by 10,000 is 20,000 is also 5. 150,000 divided by 30,000 is also 5. So you can see variable cost per unit will remain same. Fixed cost, the cost per unit came down with the activity level. But the variable cost, it will remain same. So if I now put up this chart again, now again I want to look at, this is your variable cost. Total variable cost. This is activity level. Activity level is 0, 10,000, 20,000, 30,000. So when the 0 activity level, variable cost is 0, but 10,000 activity level, variable cost is 50,000. When the 20,000 activity level, variable cost is 100,000. When the 30,000 activity level, variable cost is 150. So you can see the variable cost is, total variable cost is going up with the activity level. 50, 100, 150. Fixed cost we saw it won't go up, it will remain fixed. But now you can see what is happening for the cost per unit. Cost per unit, variable cost per unit, what happens? It is going to be the same whether it's 0 activity of 10,000 activity or 20,000 activity or 30,000 activity, cost per unit is going to be the same, 5. 5. So can you see the difference between the earlier graph and the now graph? Earlier graph, what we saw was cost, the total variable cost remain fixed. Total variable cost remain fixed with the activity level. So with the activity level, the total variable cost remain fixed. So it was like this. But this is total fixed cost. This is total variable cost. Variable cost is going up, total. Total fixed cost remains here. But then we saw on the other one, total fixed cost per unit was coming down. So this is total fixed cost per unit. This is total variable cost per unit. So we can see it is going on the opposite direction. As far as the total costs are concerned, fixed cost is remaining constant, variable cost is moving upward. But the cost per unit is concerned, unit per cost per variable is remaining constant, fixed cost is coming down. So these two graphs, you have to keep it in mind, very important. I will send you the recording link, but you must read this one very carefully and you must understand this one because this is very important. Then the other one what we looked at was what we call this. So here what you can see is the variable cost is per unit is 5, per unit is 5, per unit is 5. So this is what we call a linear relationship. Linear relationship means it is same. It is same, linear relationship. But sometimes it so happens when we go and buy, sometimes when we buy raw materials or something, right? When we are buying big quantities, we get what we call a quantity discount. So when you are buying 10,000, you may be able to buy it at 100,000. It's all right. So variable cost is 10 per unit. This is I'm talking about the variable cost now. 10,000. But when you are buying 20,000, because they will give you a discount, you may be able to buy it not for 200,000 but for 180,000. So the variable cost, even though it is vary, it is going to come down from 10 per unit to now to 9 per unit. If you are buying 30,000, it may be total cost may be 240,000 and it may come down to 8 per unit. So there you can see if I put it up, the total, so this is my activity. This is my total variable cost. Total variable cost is moving up. 100, 180, 240, it is moving up. But the cost per unit will come down. Earlier cost per unit was 6, but the cost per unit also will come down. 10, 9, 8. Here 10, yes. Here 9, 8. So this we call not linear, non-linear. Non-linear. That is, it's not constant, it is moving. The reason is you are getting big discounts when you buy big quantity. When you are doing something over and over again, you are more experienced, you can do it much more faster. So due to those reasons, sometimes you can have it like this kind of a situation. So this is what we call non-linear. Non-linear. So that's another kind of a cost. So we have learned now variable cost, we have learned fixed cost, and we have learned non-linear cost. Okay? Okay. Right. So now I'm going to look at another kind of a cost behavior, which we call step-up cost. Step-up cost. Step-up cost. So let's assume that you have a factory where up to 10,000 units you can produce it and the rent you have to pay is 100,000. But the moment you exceed 10,000, right, only up to 10,000 units you can produce it. But the moment you exceed 10,001, this factory is not good enough. You have to go for another factory and that factory also you have to pay 100,000. So maybe altogether 100 plus 100, 200,000. So the total cost is 200,000. So how is the cost behavior changing? Up to 10,000, cost is 100,000. But the moment you exceed that one, it jumps, and it goes to 200,000. Then maybe when it comes to 20,000, it jumps again. So this is what we call like a staircase, it goes up. This is what we call a step up cost. Step up. So that is why I told you, remember I told you, the costs are always going, the fixed cost will be fixed up to a limit. Up to 10,000 it will remain limit. But the moment it exceeds the 10,000, it goes up to 200,000. Right? 200,000. And then up to from 20 to 30, it will go at that. From 10,001 to 20,000, it will go at that. But the moment you exceed the 20,000, one more unit, you need another new premises, another 100,000. So it's a step up cost. So you have to be very careful of all these kind of costs, but we can find it, Sam. Right? So these are the different types of costs, which is very important for us to understand how this cost behavior takes place. So now again I'm going back to my normal screen, which I'm going to put it up now again. Additional costing. So I'm going to put up my normal screen for you. Yeah. Now can you see the normal screen, what I was doing earlier?
Yes.
Right, okay. So let's start it from here now. So we looked at the cost behavior patterns. So set up, step up cost, all that. So now we are talking about the absorption costing. So what I can see, there's a product. This product, you need to absorb the cost. So what are the costs that goes to produce a product, Sam? What are the costs that is going to produce a cost? You need materials, right? You need materials. What else you need? You need materials you require. Then what else? You need materials. Then you need labor. So these things now, for example, for this product, you can easily say, okay, the material, that ointment or whatever, we can find out the cost per unit, right? Because that is very easy. Because, you know, you are putting up 5 grams of material. So you know the cost of the material. So 5 grams, okay, 1 gram is, let's say 1 gram is $5. So you are putting up 5 grams. So you can say the material cost is $25. Right? Yes. And maybe that to produce this one, that you have to spend labor 4 hours, and maybe labor you have to pay at the rate of $3 for an hour. So 4 hours labor, 4 hours labor, we can say 12. So this is what we call direct cost. That is no problem. You can easily identify the cost. So this is what we call direct cost, that is direct material plus direct labor. No problem.
Yes.
But to produce this one, you have to incur what we call overheads. Overheads are what? Rent. Now rent, can you say for this tube how much of rent? It is difficult, isn't it? Electricity.
Yeah.
Electricity.
Yes.
Right? Then there may be some people who are doing the supervisor. So there may be a machine that we are using which we have to pay a depreciation. So now they are not directly in line with this production. Whether you produce or not, you have to pay the supervisor's salary. Whether you produce or not, you have to pay the rent. Whether you produce or not, you have to depreciate the machine. But the direct material, if you only produce only, you have to take 5 grams. If you produce only, you have to pay direct labor 4 hours. So this is why we call their direct cost. Direct cost. So you will have direct cost and also indirect cost. Indirect cost is something what we call what? Overheads. Overhead. So now we are going to look at that one. Now that is the problem. So if you want to find the total cost of a product, what do you require? You require the direct material cost, you require the direct labor cost, and also you require the overhead cost. Correct?
Yes.
You need the direct material cost, you need the direct labor cost, and you need also the overhead cost. Now direct material, direct labor, we have no problem. We can easily identify and say, yes, direct material so much, direct labor so much, all that. But the problem is with the overhead. So aim of absorption costing is to determine the full production per unit. Now that is the reason. So the full production cost per unit is direct materials plus direct labor plus overheads. So direct materials and direct labor, we have no problem. But the overhead is a problem. So we are focusing on production cost. Now when you say, remember you have two things. One is what we call total production cost. Total production cost is direct material, direct labor plus production overheads. But this is different from your total cost. What is total cost? Total cost is total production cost, that is all three together, plus selling and distribution cost. To sell the product, you have to incur some expenses, selling and distribution cost, and maybe some administration cost also. So this is what we call a total cost. So remember, total production cost is direct material, direct labor, overhead. Total cost is total production cost plus other costs like selling and distribution and all that, right? So that is what we see in a costing. So we focus on production cost at the moment. So our cost is based on total production cost. Right. Yeah. So the total cost you can see is made up. You have to carefully note down production cost. Production cost and non-production cost. That's selling and distribution, administration cost are which we call non-production cost. So production cost are direct prime cost. Direct prime cost is direct material and direct labor. Indirect cost are production overheads, factory rent, factory supervisor salary, factory depreciation, factory electricity, all that. All that together is what we call production cost. Then we have non-production cost, which are called, non-production cost. Non-production cost is, non-production cost. So the total cost is made up of both these things together. Production cost and non-production cost. Production cost is made up of direct material, direct labor and production overhead. So you can see there is no problem as far as you are concerned with your production cost, the direct material cost. But you have a problem with your just a minute.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is the chart that we have to very carefully think about, and this is what we look at all the time. So remember these terms: total production cost, total cost. Don't mix it up, because it's very important that we know exactly what we are looking at. Right. So now I come to the most important one, the overhead absorption. So I told you the problem is not with the direct material cost, not with the direct labor cost, but trying to see overhead, how to absorb it. So to arrive at the total production cost, we need to absorb the overhead into units of production using a suitable basis. So that there are three bases which we can use. The three bases that we can use is the number of units produced, or the labor hours, or the machine hours. Let's assume your total overheads for a particular period, a particular month. Let's assume the overheads are 100,000. So the total overheads are 100,000. And let's assume you are producing only one kind of a product. You are producing only one kind of. Maybe you are producing what? You are producing
Cream.
Pardon?
Green.
What? Cream. Okay, lotion. You are producing only that one kind of a lotion, and you are producing for a month 10,000 units of lotion. So if you are producing 10,000 units of lotion, your overheads are going up and overheads are incurred purely for this 10,000. So I can get 100,000 divided by 10,000. I can get that lotion overhead absorption rate. Per unit is $10. So if the direct materials were 25 and if the direct labor was 12, and now I can say overheads are 10. So my total production cost is 47. So if I know this total production cost, I can decide at what price I must send it to the market, because I have to add the selling price or the selling cost and all that, get the total cost. Then I must have a profit because I'm to be doing business for a profit. So then I can decide my selling price. So that is one way to do it. But now imagine you are producing two kinds of lotion. You are producing this A kind of lotion, 10,000 products. And there's another kind of a lotion which you are going to produce, B kind of a lotion, which you are going to produce another 5,000. And they are going to take different times. A is a very complicated product. It is going to take lot of your machine hours. B is a very simple product. You just put the tube and it comes up. So it's a simple product. So you don't need too much of machine time, too much of it. So now I can't divide this 100,000 by 15,000 and take my overhead absorption rate. Why? Because there are two types of products and two types of products are different. This is a product A, this is product B. So I can't do that one. If the products are same, we can do that, but we can't do it. So because of that, units produced will not be good to be used if you are producing more than one type of a product. Then we have to either decide labor hours or machine hours to decide on your overhead absorption. Labor hours or machine hours. So we have to decide which is to be used, labor hours or machine hours. So how do we decide whether we should do labor hours or machine hours? It all depends how your overheads are moving. If you have a company, right? If you have a company, say, let's assume that you have a company that is producing both this A and B, and both are done by a machine. In that case, your overheads are moving in line with machines. Will you give me a second, Sam?
All right.
Yeah, give me a second. Yeah, right. So we can't now, because here what is happening is yeah, right. What is happening is here we have to decide how it is working out, right? How the overheads are moving on. So we can say, okay, the 100,000 is the total overhead, and the two productions are coming, and it is coming from the machine. So we can take the machine hours. So let's assume for a 1 month the machine hours are, shall we say, 20,000 machine hours the company is using. So the assumption here is, right, the 20,000 machine hours are going. A second. Right. So let's assume let's assume that 100,000 is your overheads, but the machines are running for 20,000 hours. So what we do is we divide that overhead. Earlier we divided by the number of units, but here we divided by the machine hours, 20,000 machine hours. So we get a rate of 5. So let's assume this product A is taking 2 machine hours. 2 machine hours. Product B is taking 1 machine hour to produce. 1 unit of lotion product A, it is going to take 2 machine hours. But the product B is going to take 1 machine hour. So the rate is 5. Rate is 5. So for A, you have to apply how many, what is the charge that you have to do it?
Machine hours. Charge is 20,000.
Pardon? Yeah.
20,000.
Yeah.
Yes, this is for it's 2 hours.
Yeah. 100,000 is the thing. 100,000 is the total expenses, right?
Machine hour.
Yeah.
1,000.
Yeah. Just give me a second, Sam.
Okay.
Right, sorry. Yeah. So, so what I was trying to tell you was, okay, 100,000 is your total overheads. Earlier, what we thought was, okay, only one product. So they were producing 10,000 units. So we divide it by. But now here they are producing 2 products. So we can't divide it by the number of units. So what we thought was, okay, they are working on the machines. And then we thought, okay, 20,000 machine hours. That means what it says is, Sam, that every time when a machine runs 1 hour, there's a cost of $5.
Yes.
100,000, 20,000, that means for every time a machine runs, it costs you $5. So what I'm saying is now, the company says for the product A, the machine will have to run 2 hours. And for the product B, the machine will have to run 1 hour. So what I'm asking is for the machine, for the product A, what is the charge we must put for overheads?
5 plus 5, 10.
10. Yeah, right.
10.
10. Yeah, because every time a machine runs, you have to spend $5. So for the product A, it is going to run 2 hours, so that is 10. For the B,
Hello.
for the $5.
$5.
Yeah, for the $5, right? So that's what it is basically. So that is if you are going on machine hours. First we went on the other one, right? First we went on units. Secondly, now we are going on machine hours. That is if the product is machine intensive, this thing, right? Right. So that is one thing that's one thing that you can, one way that you can do it, right? So then the other way, sometimes you may not be using machine, you may be using lot of labor, maybe because nowadays that is not happening, but maybe old days most of the things are done by the people. So the people only consumes the overhead, right? More people you have, more water will go, more canteen expenses. So that way it is going up. So there what you are going to look at is, you are going to look at not the machine hours, you are going to look at the labor hours. Labor. So again, now let's look at the same thing. 100,000 is the total overhead, but not too much of machines, it's too much of people working, too many people working. So we can see the number of labor hours. So let's assume that there are 40,000 labor hours. You know, say for example, one man is working 8 hours for a day, right? So for a week, for a month, we'll assume that he's working 25 hours. So 25 days, so 200 hours he is working. So there are people like that working. Altogether, there's 40,000 labor hours. 100,000 is your cost. So what it says is, now we can divide 100,000 divided by 40,000. Which will tell you that every labor hour, the overhead cost is $2.50 for every labor hour. So every hour that a worker works on a product, it is going to cost 2.5. So let's assume the product A, that the laborer will have to do 4 hours. A worker will have to work 4 hours. For the B, let's assume a worker will have to work 2 hours. So can you tell me for product A, what is the overhead charge you will charge? Total cost is 100,000. There are 40,000 labor hours for a month. So that means 2.5 per labor hour. So that particular product A, it is going to take 4 hours.
Yes, it will be 2.5, right?
Pardon?
2.5.
2.5 times?
It's 10, will be 10.
10, yeah, right. 2.5 into 4. Because there are 4 hours going, that is 2.5 into 10. 2.5 into 4. 2.5 into 4. Other product? Good, very good. Other product?
That's for 2 hours will be this time.
Yeah. How much? Other product? 2.5 into?
Just time.
2.5 into 2, isn't it? Is it? 5. 2.5.
Just 5.
Yeah, into 2 is 5. So this product will take 10, this product will take 5. So now this is the simple overhead absorption what we do. Either you can absorb it on the basis of production cost, on the basis of units produced. But that can be done only if you are producing one product. Then you can absorb it on the basis of labor hour. That is provided your operation is more labor intensive. Or otherwise you can absorb it on the basis of machine hours. Now having said that, when I want to ask you, this 100,000 overhead cost may comprise many things. Rent, factory supervisor salary, what else? Depreciation, electricity. There are many things that works out 100,000. Now for example, rent for example, Sam, will it move with the number of machine hours? rent? Will it increase or reduce with the number of machine hours?
It's fixed.
It's fixed. So it won't move, isn't it? Right? So when you charge on the basis of machine hours, that is some error. Because there are some costs in that one which are not moving with the machine hour. Electricity may be. Electricity, more the machine you work, more the hours.
The cost.
But not every cost. The factory supervisor's expenditure will not move with the machine hours. Right? He has to be in the factory whether the machines work or not. Rent will not move according to the machine hour. Depreciation of the machinery may not be according to the machine hours, it may be according to the time. Right? So you can see there are certain costs that will not move according to the machine hour. So to take everything and to do it on the machine hour is not quite right. So that's a problem with the absorption costing. Then even if you take the labor hours, you can see just because you have more laborers, will your rent go? No, rent will remain fixed up to a particular point, isn't it? Right? Today you can have 10 laborers working, tomorrow you can have 10 to 12 laborers working, but your factory premises will be the same up to a point. So rent is not going to move according to labor hour. So to apportion all the overheads according to the labor hours also not right. So you can see this is the problem with the absorption costing. Anyway, we will discuss that problem when they are looking at the activity-based costing. But what I want is to remember that this is not a very good way of costing, but this is the way that we can do it, because this is the only way we can do it right at the moment for many people. So absorption rate is calculated total overhead budgeted cost. So remember, is connected, is done on the basis of budgeted cost. Why budgeted cost and not the actual cost? Actually what you need is actual cost, isn't it? But why are we taking the budgeted cost and doing it? Because if you want to do on the actual cost, you have to wait for long number of time, right? So if you are producing something like vegetables or something, you will know your actual cost only after how many years, right? Maybe after 1 month only you will know the actual cost. But you can't wait that long. So because of that, what we do is we try to take a budgeted cost. So let's assume the budgeted cost is 100,000. So we assume that the budget we will work, or not assume, we will work it out and we will see the budgeted cost is 100,000. And we will assume that the budgeted volume, budgeted labor hour, budgeted machine hour, right? And let's assume it is 20,000 hours. So we arrive at a budgeted overhead absorption rate. Budgeted overhead absorption rate of $5 per unit. 100,000 is the total. 20,000 is the number of units. So $5 per unit. We arrive at a budgeted overhead. So always we work with the budget. Why? We can't wait till the actual, because if you wait for the actual, it's going to be too long, and the actuals can change and your costing can change every month, every day. That's not very good for a business. So you must do a very good budget and get a figure. So now you have got a budgeted overhead absorption rate of fig. So now we have to see what happens. So we are budgeted for a 20,000 unit. Let's assume that we have produced only 18,000 units. Sorry, we took the machine hours. We took the machine hours. Let's assume that we are used actually only 18,000 machine hours on a particular month. Although we budgeted for 20, we are used only 18,000 machine hours. So we are budgeted at the rate of 5. So how much overheads we will absorb? 5 into 18,000, we will absorb 90,000 overheads. 90,000 overheads we will absorb, because we have used only 18,000 machine hours, and the budgeted overhead rate is 5. 5 into 18 is 90,000. Right? 90,000 we will absorb the overhead. Let's assume the actual overheads for this particular period is not 100 but 110,000. So this is the actual overhead. So remember, because we are working with the budget, So according to the budget, we will absorb only 90,000. But actual overheads are 110,000. So what has happened? How much you have absorbed? 90. What is the actual overhead? 110. So there is something what we call under-absorption. We have under-absorbed. Because 110,000 is your actual, but we have absorbed only 90,000, 5 into 18. So that 20,000 we call it a under-absorption. So this is the problem when we go with the budgets, right? When we go with the budgets, because you can't budget it to the exact amount, so you will have problems all the time. So you may not get the right thing. If you get exactly 20,000 hours, and if the exact expenditure was 100,000, then no problem. But here, expenditure is 110. We have used only 18,000 machine hours. So 90,000 we have absorbed to the product, but our actual cost is 110. So 20,000 under-absorbed. Now it can happen the other way about also. It can happen the other way about also. What is the other way about? Other way about is, you have produced 18, you have used 18,000 hours at the rate of 5, that is 90,000, but your actual overheads are only 80,000. Actual overheads are 80,000. So actual overheads are 80, but you have absorbed, according to the budget, 90,000. So that means you have over-absorbed 10,000.
Yes.
So, yeah, we have over-absorbed, we have taken more than what we have incurred. So anything under-absorbed, that is if your actual overheads are much more than what you have absorbed, then we call it under-absorption. On the other hand, if actual overheads are much less than what we have absorbed, then we call it over-absorption. So either way it can happen. Either way it can happen. So that's one problem with overhead absorption when we go in, because we can't accurately estimate it. So we can have, so these are the areas that they will test you all the time. So that's basically something which I want you to know. Now, overhead absorption procedure. So what is the procedure? First of all, it has to go through 3 stages. The 3 stages are allocation, apportionment, and absorption. First of all the overheads, the rent, factory supervisor salary, then what else? Electricity, every overhead must be allocated to that cost center. So now you might have a total electricity bill of 200,000 for the total company. That is the office and the factory. Right? And the factory and office, 200,000 total electricity bill. So first of all, this must be allocated to our production center, whatever it may be. We have to allocate it. So the production center we have to allocate, okay, production center is 150,000. So that we can do it. If you have a separate meet or something like that, we can find out and do it. So that's the first thing that we do. We try to allocate all the expenses to the cost center. Cost center. Now, for example, if you look at quality control, there will be a lot of expenditure on the quality control. Allocate all those expenditure on the quality control. Right? Quality control. Having done that one, allocation, then the next thing what we have to do is we have to apportion it. Apportion it. So all what we have allocated should be apportioned. So now let's assume that we have got a total, what cost? Rent. Rent. The total rent for the factory is 300,000. Total factory rent allocated is 300,000. But there are 2 factories, factory A and factory B. Factory A is occupying 20,000 square feet. Factory B is occupying 10,000 square feet. So rent, you have to decide what is the best way to apportion it. Now rent, if you want to apportion, what is the best thing? Is it the floor area or is the number of people? What do you think? Rent, if you want to apportion.
If you want to portion,
Yeah.
number of
Employees or the floor area? What do you like? Rent. Rent is rent. Normally, what is the basis for rent? What is the basis for rent? Rent is based on floor area, isn't it?
Oh, yes, floor area.
Rent is not based on the number of people who are living in your house. Rent is based on the floor area. So portion it on the basis of the floor area. So you have to very intelligently think. Electricity, what is the best way to apportion it? Say electricity only lights. Then you can go by the number of bulbs, for example.
Yes.
Number of bulbs. If it is electricity of the air conditioner, you can go by the number of air conditioner. Right? So you apportion the expenditure, you have to judge very carefully. Somehow not very easy to judge it, but you have to judge it and see what is the best method to apportion. Now, for example, canteen expenses, right? You have a canteen in your office, right? Canteen expenditure. Canteen is an expenditure that has to be apportioned. What is the best way to apportion the canteen expenditure? What's the best way? Canteen expenditure. Canteen is a canteen. Who is taking the canteen services? For whom is the canteen available? Yeah, canteen is available for whom? Pardon? Canteen is available for whom? Canteen is available for, is it for the customer or is it for the employees?
For employees.
Employee. So you apportion according to the number of employees.
Yes, number of employees.
Number of employees, right? Canteen expenditure you can apportion according to the number of employees. Sales reps expenditure. The sales rep is incurring certain expenditure going up and down, all that overhead, right? What is the best way to apportion that expenditure? Sales people expenditure. Maybe the number of customers, isn't it?
Yes.
Number of customers. So you have to think. You have to think and decide what is. So here I thought rent I will go by the floor area. So there is 300,000 rent, 30,000 is the floor area altogether. So I know the rent per square feet is 10. So I will apportion for A 10 into 20,000, 200,000, and B I will apportion 10 into 10,000, 100,000. That is how we will apportion the rent. So that is what we call apportionment. And once all these things are apportioned, right, first you allocate, then you apportion. Now once you apportion, now you have for the entire production department, the total expenditure. So your rent, your electricity, your factory supervisors, everything allocated in a portion. Now the total expenditure is 1 million. Now this 1 million, we have to absorb it. Absorb it. So absorption, you remember, you can go like what I discussed earlier, number of units, if it is going to be one product. Or it can be gone by the labor hours. Or it can be gone by the machine hours. So these are the three generally common methods of absorption. So that is applied to each unit. So your total expenditure of 1 million, right? We know the number of labor hours are 200,000. So that means it's the labor hour cost is 5. So when we produce 1 unit, we will, and if it is going to take 2 labor hours, we will absorb 2 labor hour cost, 5 into 2, 10. So when you are doing some questions, we will come across this, but you have to remember the basis, how we are going to do these things. Yeah, right. So that is what we call basically the absorption, the 3 ways, the 3 steps: allocation, apportionment, and absorption. So overhead absorption rate. So if a department is producing a single product, then the number of units should be the way. That is what we were talking. If you are producing one single product, no problem. Just go and do it, the number of units. So very simple. You just take the 1 unit, number of units, take the total overhead cost, and you can do it. Right? So, yeah. So, overhead absorption rate. So, simply, very simple for you to do that one. Take the number of units and do it. If you are producing many products using direct labor hours or machine hours, could be used. That is, you are producing more than one product, many products, then the right thing is either direct labor hours or machine labor hours, right? And even though we can calculate the actual absorption rate by taking actual overheads and actual production, we don't do that one, because if we do that, we have to wait for a long time to get the actual. And also, we don't want to change the costing every month, Sam, right? Because costing must be something very firm. Every month, if you are going to change the prices and all that, the people will really go mad with you. That's not very good. So because of that, you must, you don't use the actuals, you use, because of that, the budget, the predetermined rates. So this is what we call the predetermined rates, the budget. We use the budgeted expenditure and budgeted number of hours. So overheads may be throughout the year, and predetermined smoothens the variation, because, you know, you might find first month 100,000 overheads, second month it's going up to 125,000, third month it comes down to 75,000, fourth month it goes up to 110,000, fifth month it comes down to 90,000. So if you are going to do on actual basis, every year, every month you will be changing your overhead absorption rate, which is not practical. But what you can see is when you go over a period of, you know, say I have got 5 months, right? 1 month it went up to 100, next month it went up to 125. So if I take the 5 months, I can see the average is 100. So that is why what we do. We don't wait for the whole 1 month and do it. We take a kind of an average figure and do it. So that because of that, you know, the figures will become somewhat smooth. Otherwise, every month, if you are going to do costing, very expensive and not worth. So, when you do that on a predetermined basis, one problem we have is either there can be over or under absorption. Because we are going on a predetermined budget, but your actual absorption or the other thing could be less or more, and that can have a problem. So the overhead absorption rate is calculated always, whatever the overhead absorption rate, let's assume 5, right, into the actual number of units. So let's assume we have produced 20,000. It is 100,000 is the amount absorbed. Number of units is 20,000 and overhead absorption rate is 5. So amount absorbed 100,000. Then you look at the actual overheads. Actual overheads are, let's assume, 120,000. So there's an under absorption of 20,000. So this is how you calculate the over or under absorption. Overhead absorption rate into actual units minus actual overhead. So I'm going to send you these slides. You must read these slides very carefully, because you must get these fundamentals right. Then only you will not have any problem in your later area. Right.
Yes, for YouTube, right? The YouTube.
Pardon?
Link for YouTube, right?
Yeah, I will give a link for the YouTube, because I think that is easy for you, no?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'll send you the link for YouTube, and that will help you with the whole thing. So, advantages of absorption costing. What are the advantages? So, advantages are the fixed production cost can be very substantial, right? Your direct material, direct labor may be there, but there can be lot of overheads cost, right? And if these overheads costs are not absorbed into your product cost will be understated. So actually that is what is happening in your marginal costing. We will learn later. Marginal costing don't take the overheads into account. They value the product on the basis of direct materials and direct labor. But that is good, bad. Because the thing is, you can have a big overhead absorption thing. Let's assume, for example, the direct materials are only 5, direct material cost is per particular unit, is direct materials is just 5, direct materials 5, direct labor let's assume 2. So let's assume that we have 100,000 overheads, and that our 1 unit we have one kind of a production we are doing, and we are producing 10,000. So overhead absorption per unit is 10. So you have to put the 10. So then only you get the total cost. But if you don't go on absorption costing, you have a cost of only 5 plus 2. This is what the marginal costing says. So you can see marginal costing cost will be 7. whereas the total cost is 17 under absorption. So when there is big overhead figure, if you ignore that one, your costing will be wrong. The costing will not be accurate. Imagine you take the 7 and you try to do the pricing, which is dangerous. Whereas the actual cost is 17. So that is why it's an advantage for you to do on absorption costing. And it is consistent with what we call accruals concept. What is accruals concept? Accruals concept is we take expenditure only relating to that period. So now if you produce lot of products, let's assume that you produce 10,000 products, 10,000 units of this product. So now you will value it at 17 into 10. Total cost of sales is 170,000. But let's assume that you have sold only 5,000 or 3,000 units, right? So when you sell 3,000 units, that means you are carrying forward 7,000 units to the next period. This is the closing stock. Because you produced 10,000, you sold only 3,000, you are going to carry forward 7,000. Now, if that 7,000, because that 7,000 are not sold, but to produce the 7,000, you incurred per unit $10 overheads. To produce that 7,000 units, you incurred $10 overheads per unit. So, is it right to charge that 70,000 overhead to this year, that is the year which you have not sold the goods, or should I charge it the next year when we sell the goods? What do you think is right? Because although I have incurred 70,000 expenditure, I have not sold these goods this year, 7,000 units. Right? I sold only 3,000 units. 7,000 units not sold. So, what do you think? You should charge that 70,000 to this year, or should I take it forward for the next year? Pardon? Pardon?
You said next year, right?
You must take it for the next year because that is what the accruals concept says. Because you are selling the goods next year. So then the cost must be coming to the next year and not this year. And that is what exactly the absorption costing is doing. Absorption costing will value this stock including the overhead at 17, and they will say 7,000 into 17, they will carry forward for the next year. So in that 17, you have a 10 overhead. So 10 into 70, that's 70,000, you carry forward for the next year. But if it is marginal costing, you will carry forward the stock at 7 into 70,000, only taking the direct cost, and that 70,000 will be charged to this year, which is not right, because we have not sold the goods, right? And to charge a big expenditure is not right. So that is the argument for absorption costing. Is it clear for you?
Yes.
Right. So inventory need to be varied with fixed overhead. So the accounting standard IAS 2 says all inventory must be valued with fixed cost. So because of that, this is the method to apply, right? Inventory should be valued with fixed cost. It should be valued with fixed cost. So the IAS 2 says we must value all our inventory on the absorption costing method. So even though there are maybe some disadvantages, this is the right method to use when you are valuing the inventory. So, of course, when you do this overhead under absorption or under absorption, it will tell you where your problems are. Why did not you absorb overhead? The reason is you have incurred more expenditure than what you budgeted. So that means you have been inefficient. Or the reason is you have not done your target production. Again, you are inefficient. Or maybe that you have over-absorbed. That means you have been doing very well. You have reduced the cost. So you have been efficient. So under absorption, over-absorption will help us to understand the efficiency and the inefficiency. And also, although we talk about the variable cost and fixed cost and all that, what we know is over a long period, every cost is a variable cost, right? because if you rent out a premises and if you find that rent is too much and that you are not having enough production, you will fix it. You will go into a smaller player. So like that, ultimately every cost in the long term will be a variable cost. So therefore, even though we talk about the fixed cost and the variable cost, the right method to apply is the absorption costing, because ultimately every cost is a variable cost. So this is what we need to know about the advantages of this costing. Now I want to talk about disadvantages of this costing. Disadvantages. So what's the problem with this costing? So the problem with this costing is apportionment and absorption are very arbitrary. We saw that one, right? We go by labor hours, we go by flow area, we go by machine hours, but they are all arbitrary. Some of the expenditure won't move in the way that we think. So it is very arbitrary. And the profits can change with the production volume, right? So because since you are carrying forward in the inventory the overhead, you can manipulate the overhead figure, and you can show bigger profit or you can show lower profit based on your closing stock valuation, because now the closing stock is valued based on your overhead. So closing stock can be increased or closing stock can be reduced. So depending on the way that you are going to absorb the overhead. So to that extent, this can be manipulated. So that's another disadvantage. First disadvantage is it is very arbitrary. And this kind of overhead thing will encourage the people to overproduce, because you don't need to sell. You can just produce and keep it in the inventory and show big profits. You can show big profit, but ultimately you may not sell anything. So because you always remember during sales versus cost of sales we compare. So cost of sales is opening stock plus production minus closing stock. So if your closing stock is more, that is you have produced more and more and more, your cost of sales will be what? Will be low. When you have more cost of sales, more closing stock, your cost of sales will be low, because cost of sales is equivalent to opening stock plus production cost minus closing stock. So if the closing stock is going to be more and more, your cost of sales will get reduced. So by that way you can show bigger profit without selling the product. That's very dangerous. So that is why that's a big disadvantage in this method, what we are using it. So these are some of the problems that we have in our absorption costing. So absorption costing is a good method, but it has its own disadvantages. So we must know the advantages and disadvantages very well. So the next topic is marginal costing. I'm not going to do that one today. I will do it. When are you free next? Tomorrow you are not free, no?
Tomorrow around evening time I'll be free.
Evening time. Hold on for a second. I can fix up another lesson for you tomorrow. Evening after what time you are free?
Evening after 4 o'clock.
After 4 o'clock, yeah.
5 o'clock onwards.
5 o'clock you are free. That is your time, 5 o'clock, no? So can we, today we started at 6 o'clock. No? Your time?
Yes.
Can we do it tomorrow? Yeah. Can we do tomorrow, sir? Your time, 6 o'clock?
Yes, it's okay.
Yeah, shall we do, so that we can cover up some more area of the theory?
Yes.
I want to do the marginal costing and activity-based costing, so make it tomorrow 6 o'clock again?
Yes.
Yeah. So let's meet tomorrow 6 o'clock and start on again. So I'm going to send you this link today. I want you to go to this thing carefully and understand it. So tomorrow I will meet you again at 6 o'clock your time, and we will go into marginal costing and activity-based costing. Okay?
Okay.
All right.
So, yes, I have a question.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I go to the website for the exam, I found out like if I want to apply for reserve the exam,
Yeah.
they've given me selections that I have to take 3 selections. There is no option for 2 or 3, only 3.
Pardon?
Like E1
Yeah.
and P1,
Yeah.
F1.
Yes.
So because right now I'm studying E1 and P1, so F1
Yeah.
I didn't study yet now.
Yeah.
So if I want to take, I have to cover also that one should be 3 together.
Yeah, that's right. No, you don't need to do 3 together. You can do it at any time, but you can't do the case study till you complete all 3.
Yes, case study I have to finish all 3.
All 3. But you don't need to sit together. So what you can do is you can complete E1, do the E1, finish it off. Do the P1 and finish it off. And then start F1.
Yes.
And then, so by August, you will be ready after doing all 3, that one. Or otherwise, if you have time, maybe you can start P1 and F1 together. Like now we are doing P1, so we can start F1 also later, if you have time.
Yes.
So then you decide when you are ready. Only you do. That is the advantage in this paper. When you are ready, only you will sit. So if you are ready with E1, you can sit. If you are ready with P1, you can sit. If you are ready with F1, you can sit. But you have to do all 3 before you sit for the case study.
Yes, I'll finish first E1.
Yeah.
Then I'll go to P1. Yes.
That's right. Once you finish up the E1, we will start off the F1.
Yes.
Yeah. We will start on the F1 once you finish up the E1. Because otherwise all 3 together is too much. So what you can do is we will first finish up E1, then we will do the F1 and P1 parallel.
Yes.
Okay. We will do that way. Don't worry. Yeah.
All right.
Okay. So I'll see you tomorrow, 6 o'clock again.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye. Bye.
Bye. See you.